Assemblyman James Gallagher joins us today after a recent trip to the U.S. Mexico border. This uncut, raw interview is a web exclusive. We'll also have some of the interview tonight at 5:30 as well. So, welcome back.
Good to be with you again, Hayley.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your experience. You spoke with Border Patrol agents, right? What did they share some of the biggest issues that they deal with just on a daily basis?
Right. Well, I mean, one of the things I was really impressed with is just the professionalism of our Border Patrol and the amazing job that I think they are doing, but they're stretched really thin. And I think the biggest thing I heard from them is right now 1,200 apprehensions a day on the San Diego unit. So this crisis has moved to California in a big way. And they're very much like trying to deal with the humanitarian effort with processing of asylum seekers and others. And that's taking them away from enforcement.
Right.
And so there's, it's very clear there's a lot of getaways. There's, a lot of people coming through that they have no idea, where they are.
So they're dealing with illegal crossings, right?
Right.
But then there's also that whole screening process for people who are trying to go through it the right way. What is that like for them?
Right. I mean, there's people that come through and do it properly, the right way, and they're supposed to go to the port of entry at San Ysidro. So we actually saw that.
Okay.
But a lot of people are coming and just trying to come across, and then they get caught, so they can be part of that apprehension group, and then they say the right words, and then it's like, okay, well, we'll start processing you. And really what they end up getting is just a notice saying, hey, come back and appear at a hearing wherever you're deciding to go in the United States. And after that, there's really not a whole lot of tracking of where individuals are going.
Okay,
so
and they're in our country when they get that notice to go to the hearing. So they can basically go wherever they want as long as, with the promise that they show up for the hearing.
Right, I mean, one of the things they told us is like people will say where they're gonna go.
Yeah.
And so it kind of depends on where you're going as to when your hearing's gonna be. So they told us like, hey, if people say they're going to Des Moines, Iowa, well, that might be actually a hearing in maybe 4 or 5 months.
Right.
Right, but if they say they're going to New York, and a lot of them say that could be years, before their hearing is, because they're so backed up with asylum hearings in those jurisdictions.
So you're talking a lot about, being backed up, being overwhelmed. Is staffing an issue? Could our National Guard help out?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I was thinking of as we were talking to them, and I said, hey, would it help to have a lot more, California National Guard down here? And they said, certainly that would be helpful. Maybe not them maybe doing the direct enforcement, but they could help with all the processing and things that they're having to do, so that it would free up their manpower to do their main job, which is enforcement of the border.
Okay. With the overwhelm and the situation that you observed there, I mean, how does, when we talk about human trafficking or bringing fentanyl or other illegal drugs into the country, is that something that's happening, do you think, at the same time or just getting overlooked because there are so many people?
What we heard and what we saw actually is a lot of the drugs are actually coming through the port of entry.
Okay.
And that's where they have a lot of security. They have canine units, that are trying to catch people. And we actually saw, they showed us some of the video and the x-rays of actually people being transported in secret compartments in cars that they caught.
Oh, wow. The dogs, can they smell that too?
Well, and the dogs really more are smelling for the drugs. Right.
Okay.
And we certainly saw a lot of that. And they are certainly catching, people, and I can't remember the exact number, but a lot of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and they said, hey, actually cocaine is making a bigger comeback now too. We're seeing those drugs come across, but the problem is you can't catch everyone, right? And so fentanyl is still very much coming across, our border. It's a big problem, and we do need to put more, focus on the enforcement on that part of the problem as well.
What do you think about California's sanctuary laws? I mean, do you think that is playing into some of the issues we're seeing at all?
Absolutely, and I heard that directly, from the Border Patrol agents when we were sitting down and talking with them. That question was asked, and they said, look, they told us stories of people that they had apprehended who have warrants in local jurisdictions, warrants out for their arrest in local jurisdictions in California, and yet they'll call to those places and say, hey, we have this guy, do you want to do a detainment agreement with us? And they'll say no, because they can't. Because of sanctuary state law. So you have people with active warrants, they've committed crimes, or suspected of committing a crime, and we're not even working with Border Patrol to make sure that there's justice for the victims. So it's a huge problem. And then you talk about, I mean, you know, if they're able to even talk to each other, you know, about people that local government has maybe, you know, local law enforcement has apprehended, they're not able to talk to Border Patrol to ensure that these people are deported, you know, after they've served their time, and make sure they go back to their home country and don't stay here to commit more crimes.
Why is that? What's the communication barrier there?
It's because of sanctuary state policy. So in California, you know, a few years back, I was opposed to it, vehemently opposed to it. Many of us were, but they passed this law that essentially says that local law enforcement cannot cooperate, talk to, work with federal Border Patrol or ICE when it comes to immigration.
Yeah.
So with anybody they have in their custody, they're not allowed to like inform ICE, okay, this person's about to be released, you know, you guys come in and take care of your job, which is to either deport or otherwise deal with someone who is a, you know, illegal, you know, immigrant in our country.
Yeah. You know, it's easy to see the problems, right? We hear about the problems every single day. What are some of the solutions that you have in mind?
One, I think we got to reform, you know, that sanctuary state policy. I mean, at the very least, let's do this for serious criminals, right? You know, we have people on our hands who are, you know, murderers, rapists, child molesters, right? We should be working with our federal partners to make sure that these people get deported from our country. That there's justice. When there's warrants out and we catch some of these individuals trying to get back into the country, right? When we catch them, there should be justice and accountability, and that requires local and, you know, state and federal partners to work together. And so we actually have, you know, there's legislation to do that, you know, right now. We are trying to do more reforms on that front. I think that would be a very good policy to put in place. The other thing is I think we can utilize more of our National Guard to maybe be a help, you know, in the current surge that we're seeing at the California border, California-Mexico border.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned that there's legislation in the works. Is there a certain specific bill that you're working on right now?
Yeah, there's a bill that's been introduced by one of my colleagues, Bill Hayley, that would specifically focus on, you know, the child molesters, those who have victimized our kids, right? That we need to be working together with and have a very clear exemption from the sanctuary state policy so that our local and law enforcement can work with federal partners. But we're also looking at, you know, hey, let's make this change also for those who have the serious and violent offenders. There's no reason they should be back in our country.
Yeah.
You know, like if you come here, you know, first of all, you're coming here illegally, and then you're actually committing serious illegal acts against the people in our country, you shouldn't stay here, you know? And so we need, you know, we can make those changes that I think will actually ensure that that happens.
Do you think enough is being done to help the people who really do need sanctuary, people who are escaping a really violent situation? You hear a lot about, you know, women and their children. Are they getting stuck or are they getting help?
I mean, from what I can see, they are, you know, and certainly I think, you know, in this country, we do want to help people who are, you know, escaping tyranny. I mean, that's why so many of us came here, you know, our ancestors came here, you know, and so absolutely, like, you know, I mean, for those who are, you know, truly seeking asylum in our country, what I do see is that, you know, that's that process right now, is that they're basically getting the, you know, a court date to come back. I think there probably could be a little bit more like, how do we ensure that we follow up on those things and make sure that, you know, those court dates are happening sooner in time, so that those with legitimate claims are able to, you know, make their claim and get, you know, entry, you know, official entry, I guess, into, you know, our country. But, you know, how many of those are not actually asylum seekers? That's the problem. It's something that we don't really know because of the system that we have in place.
Okay. So, yeah, we'll see what comes out of the state assembly. Anything more you think the governor could be doing differently about this?
You know, I mean, the governor kind of bragged that he sent down National Guard, but the effect of that was about 20 National Guard that went down to the border. I mean, this is kind of common with our governor. Like, he makes big announcements that he's going to do something. You know, yesterday he talked about how he's going to now really provide real oversight to homeless money. Even though $24 billion has gone out of our, Treasury into homeless funding. And we know from the audit that came out last week, there's been absolutely no oversight and accountability when it comes to that. So, again, the governor's like saying he's doing stuff about, the border, but it's been very minimal. And I think, yes, he could do a whole lot more. I mean, the other thing that we heard, and it was very clear, is that actually what Texas has done in terms of bringing in their state resources to really help enforce, the border, has all the cartels and the people who are running the illegal operations going, okay, well, we're not going to go to Texas. They're moving them over to, just a direct result that they're moving them into California because they know, hey, that's kind of the weakest point.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next. I know that we're addressing this and we're talking about this at the state level, and it's definitely front and center as we get into the presidential election. So hopefully we'll see some changes come down the road.
Hopefully. So, yeah, I mean, a big issue and certainly something that we need to continue to talk about and address.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll have part of this interview again available tonight, Friday at 5:30.